So today is a very special day. We have our first female coach on the podcast as a guest, Katie Smith, who's had tremendous achievements. Thank you for taking time out, Katie, today. So you're a USSFC licensed coach working at Pittsburgh State University. You've been a former director of coaching at Arkansas Revolution with Arkansas State University and coached the Arkansas ODP. So you started coaching straight out of high school and have already broken several records as a coach, and you've also received Coach of the Year award. So, can you tell us about your journey so far, please?
Yes, for sure. So I started coaching high school basketball first. And so right out of high school, I began coaching there. I got there by coaching youth church basketball for a coach at the school. And then after I graduated, she offered me to come on as an assistant. So I was there. And then I started playing soccer at my local community college. While I was there, the head coach his father had founded a local club. So he offered for some of us girls to go out there and help run skills night. So that was my first time ever coaching soccer. And I just fell in love with it. And I knew that's what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So I went up to the athletic director at the high school that I was coaching basketball at the first time I ever met him. And I told him if he ever wanted a soccer coach that didn't suck to let me know. I was very confident 18-year-old in that moment. And it wound up working out because 2 years later, he called me and their coach had left. So he offered me the job for the girls and boys varsity teams. So 20 years old, got offered a head coaching job, coaching kids 18 and younger. And so I moved back home, began coaching there. I transitioned there, and then I also started coaching with Lobos Rush, which is a local club in that area. And there we made it to the semifinals of the state championship. We lost the team that wound up winning the entire thing, but we had a very successful regular season. Our JV team went undefeated all the way until the last game, so we had a lot of success there as well. My middle school boys team they finished runners up my first year, and then our second year we wound up winning, which our first year was a heartbreaker. We lost literally with 30 seconds left to a team, and the next year we knocked them out of the playoffs with 30 seconds left. So it came full circle, and we wound up winning the entire season out. We didn't lose a game. We won district and regional, and then they wound up not having a state tournament, unfortunately, but had a lot of success there as well. And then through the middle school, that's where I won the back-to-back Coach of the Year awards for the Tennessee Middle School Association. So anyways, had a lot of success there. And then through that, I was offered my spot at Northwest Mississippi Community College. So I was on there as a volunteer assistant. That was my first exposure to coaching college. We had a lot of success. We went to the national tournament. Same situation. We lost in the semifinals to the team that wound up winning the entire thing. And we had finished runners up in the region to another strong side that wound up playing in the national championship game over us. Yeah. So we had a lot of success there, had a really great time. And then through all of those opportunities, I was given the opportunity to come on with Arkansas State. So I finished my student teaching this past spring. I graduated in May, and then I began my journey at Arkansas State. So I was there this past fall. I also served, as you said, as a technical director for a local club. And then I was with Arkansas ODP, and I was there for the past 6 months, and then got offered the job at Pittsburgh State. And just yesterday made the move to Kansas, and now I'm here. So
Congratulations on the new move, and this was you've had a tremendous journey so far, and we are really going to go into further details on what you did to achieve so much. So now your achievements with the Northwest Mississippi Community College has been immense. Most wins in the college history, 7 players selected for the MACCC team. You won the coaching staff of the year as well. So what were the building blocks for such tremendous success?
yeah, I mean, really all credit to James, the head coach. He does a phenomenal job. I think James is really involved in the local soccer scene in Memphis and Mississippi, and he's able to pull kids in. Northwest is a college that's set up for success. The way that they do their scholarships, it really is easy and cheap to bring in kids from the Mississippi area. They want local kids, and we love local kids because local kids are awesome. They love the school. They grew up wanting to go there or wanting to stay in the area, and so it's really good to help that play into what you're trying to accomplish there. And I think another thing that James does really well is he's really big on culture. And I think you hear a lot of coaches try to sell culture, but at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, they really don't mean it. When things get difficult, they're going to be the first ones to be screaming at their kids and treating people poorly. And I think when I was on staff at Northwest, one of the things that I really appreciated the most was just James's authenticity, and he's very genuine. He wants to see these kids succeed, not just in soccer, but in life as well. And I think he built a culture where everybody on that team was bought in, and every single kid felt like they had a chance to make an impact, that they mattered. And when we got into games, we would put, I mean, our entire bench, excuse me, our entire bench in the game. And that's something that you just don't see. And every single kid got playing time. I don't think there was a single kid on our roster that didn't touch the field. When we were at the national tournament, every single kid on our roster got playing time in the national tournament. That's pretty unheard of. And I think just building a culture like that, you are setting yourself up for success because those kids are going to go to battle for you. And that's what we saw the entire year. And yeah, credit to him. He's a fantastic coach, really great guy, and he's done a really good job there.
I think you said something powerful that you can really have high standards for culture and still achieve success, on-field success. So now, continuing with your success story, you've been very, very successful as a school coach at Collierville School. So over there, you won the TMSA regional and sectional championship, and you finished with the best record in the league history. Your girls finished regional runners up. So can you tell us about that entire experience as a school coach? Because there are a lot of school coaches who watch this podcast. And what did you do to achieve all this success as a coach?
Yeah, and honestly, a lot of my answers are going to go back to culture just because I really think culture is massive. And I think for the modern player and the kids that we see now, they care about whether or not you care about them. They're not the type of kids now that just respect you because you're the adult and you're the coach, and they have to respect you. If you don't show them respect or genuine care, then they're not going to respect you, and they don't care what you have to say. And so I think my middle school boys, when I came in, they had not won a game, or they had won, I think, 2 games the year before I got there.
Yeah.
And they had a coach that great guy, but just wasn't a soccer guy. He didn't know anything about the sport. And these kids would leave their high level club and come to school practice, and it was a joke. And they didn't really care to be there. It was them just having a good time. And it was what it was. And when I came in, one of the things that I told them was like, that's not going to work anymore. Like when we come in, this is going to be taken seriously because you guys are too good of players to come in and act like this is a joke. Like you could win the entire thing. And I think very quickly we set the standard that we were going to work hard. And I had a really great group of 8th graders and 7th graders as well. But my 8th graders were really good leaders. And I think that that really helped me because once they were sold, they were able to kind of hold everyone else accountable. And I think that when accountability comes from within the team, that's powerful because when it's always the coach, nobody really cares at some point. So I think we just set the standard there. And I think when we started winning our first couple of games, the boys kind of realized like, wow, we could actually win the entire thing. And at that point, they bought in. We never had any issues. They worked hard. I think practices were game-like and challenging, and all of those things are important. And we can delve into those topics. But I think the ultimate thing is just having the right culture and the right mindset going into things. And I think when you take teams that are used to losing, that can be difficult to change. And I think when you come in, you just have to be a little bit tough on them. It's harder to be tough on the front end and then kind of loosen the reins later on versus trying to come in and just be buddy buddy. And now we haven't accomplished anything. And so my kids, I build relationships with them. I care about them as people, not just players. Every single kid on my team, if they played another sport, if they did band, if they did performing arts, I was there. I was at everything that I could be, and I would support them outside of soccer because they knew that I cared about them outside of the sport. So they were able to give 110% within the sport because there is that relationship there. And when I held them accountable when they weren't doing what they should be, and I would say something to them, they knew it came from a place of me wanting them to be better and calling them up versus calling them out, right? And so I think that's where a lot of that success came from, was just building those relationships. And like you said, I had a really great time there. We had the first year had finished runners up, and it was, like I said earlier, it was just a heartbreaker. And then the next year we were able to kind of rectify that, and we were able to beat that same team, which is also our rival school, at the last second. And so we came full circle there. I had a really great group of boys, and I'm really, really sad to be leaving them. I was hoping I would be able to be there this spring for one more time, but I had a really good group of kids. And like I said, culture is everything. And then on the girls' side, I would say that in Memphis, we're really blessed with a really strong club in Lobos Rush and Germantown Legends. They're both phenomenal clubs, really great coaches, and really do a good job with player development. I think that in school, you're more so trying to put the pieces together, because all these kids are, at least in high school, all these kids are playing club. In our area, maybe not in every area, but where I was, every kid on our team was playing club. If you didn't play club, you probably weren't making the school team, because there's so much talent there. And I think that when you have that set up, you are kind of relying on the success of these kids in club to then be able to build onto that with school, because with school you only get them for a couple months. So I think we're just really lucky to have a lot of local talent. Houston, that is right down the road from us, they're with us like two of the best programs in the state of Tennessee, and all these kids are playing for the same two clubs. So a lot of credit there. And then just being able to come in and, like I said, have the right culture and put the pieces together. And Coach G does a really good job with, same thing, just building relationships. And he's a fantastic coach, really good X's and O's. And yeah, so I think all of that, like I said, big points, culture, but also player development as we can, and really good local clubs, which definitely helps.
I reckon this is going to be a very big learning experience, because despite all the on-field success, you've put culture and you mentioned people over player. Now you've put all of this much above any of the technical and tactical and physical parts of the game. So now I've read a lot about, I mean, I've listened to your previous podcasts. I've read a blog that you have written for Soccer Coach Weekly, where you mentioned that your coaching philosophy is person over player. So can you go a bit more in depth into this? Please tell us more about it.
Yeah, so I think, I've kind of touched on it a few times, but just to kind of reiterate, for us, like, kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And my background is as an educator. My degree is in special education. I grew up helping with children with special needs, and then also helping teach children in different aspects. For example, when I lived in Memphis, out of high school, when I was in college and I was playing and I was coaching at the club, I also was teaching preschool at a local organization. And so I think just being an educator, you really get to know the thought process behind kids more than a coach. And I think coaching is teaching. So having an education background helps me understand my kids better. And it helps me understand what I can do to connect with them well. I am not currently, because now I'm more so in college, but at that time I was with kids all day long. I was with my middle schoolers, I was with preschoolers, I was always around kids. And so it helped give me really great insight just into kind of what I need to do to get the best out of them. And I think that's what it comes down to. And so for me, I think there are a lot of coaches that focus on what kids can do for you on the field. You care about how much they can give you, how technical they are, what they do tactically, their soccer IQ, and you lose sight of the person, because at the end of the day, they are people first. They are people that are going to school, that are having bad things happen to them, that have bad days, that go home maybe to not great situations, and you never know what these kids are going through. And I think that we're blessed to have sports, because it gives us an outlet to get some of those emotions out or forget about them for a little bit. But at the end of the day, they're still there, and they're kids, and they're 12 years old, and they don't know how to process that. And I think I see coaches that expect the best out of their kids every single day, and I just don't agree with that. I think they're human beings first, and they're always going to have those off moments. And I think those are the moments that the kids look at you to see what you're going to do. Are you going to help them? Are you going to understand? Are you going to encourage them? Or are you going to be a jerk? And while you're not doing anything, so just sit out and don't talk to us, right? And I think that's where, when we place the value of them as people and we get to know them and we build relationships, like I said earlier, we can call them up, we can hold them accountable, and we can have those difficult conversations with them because they know that we care and we love them and we want what's best for them. When we don't have those relationships and we try to do those things, then those kids don't care what we're saying. And at the end of the day, they're just thinking, okay, well, Coach Katie's a jerk, so I'm not going to listen to her. And they move on. And we've lost not just the impact that they can have on the field, but we have also lost the ability to impact their life and impact their character and who they are. And that's the whole point of all of this in general, right? Is to help build them as people and help them gain the life skills that they need to be successful. And that's a big thing with my kids that I always say, and I always say at my parent meetings, I'm like, I want them to gain skills that are going to help them be successful in life. That's responsibility, hard work, all of those things, right? And so for me, if you're not doing those things, I'm going to hold you accountable, because if you show up late to your job 5 times in a row, you're getting fired, right? So you can't do that now, because these are the habits you're forming for life. So I think all in all, just putting an emphasis on them as people, like I said, going to things outside of soccer, supporting them, it means the world to them. And they truly are looking for people to make an impact on them. And I think that's our job. And I think when we are focused so much on soccer, we're losing that. And honestly, for me, these things go hand in hand. When you emphasize them as a person and they feel important, they become more invested in you as a coach in soccer. They work harder and they get better. So it all kind of is a loop, right? And I think the first step is just building them up as people.
I think this is such a powerful message, especially because not too many youth players actually make it as professional footballers, do they? So I think they really need to we need to create an experience that is beneficial to them. Now, I'm glad to see that there's a gradual increase in the number of female players in the male game. It's far from ideal, but it's gradually happening. Now, what makes you different is that you're a female coach who's not only worked in the male game, but you have also achieved success. So have you noticed any major differences in coaching male and female players, and if so, how do you modify your approach?
Yeah, I think that they're biologically different, right? So that's the first big one. I think when you're talking about middle school boys, middle school girls, high school boys and girls, there's biologically they're built differently. And I think that goes more into the load side of things. Like I can give my boys players heavier loads in training because they can handle it. Whereas with the girls, they're not biologically built for that. So you have to be careful with your load. I cannot make the same training session for a high school girls team and a high school boys team, because that either I'm under training the boys or I'm overtraining the girls, because biologically they're just not equal. So I think that's one of the big things that I learned very early on, was like I have to make sure that it makes sense for the group I'm with. Not, and I think that's where a lot of coaches mess up, because they take sessions online and they just run the session and implement it, or this is an activity that I saw on YouTube and now we're going to do it. But it's like, does it make sense in your context? And if it doesn't, can you take that activity but modify it a little bit to make it make more sense, versus just copy and paste what you see on the internet? And I think it's great that we have all these resources, but I definitely think that's something where it's having a negative impact on certain environments. And I think we as a whole need to do a better job of that. That's a side tangent. But anyways, so the biological aspect for sure. And then also mentality. I think that when you look at boys players statistically, and this is just based in research, like boys care about themselves first. They want to look good. They want to do stuff that's super cool. They want to make a highlight reel all the time. Whereas girls care about their teammates, right? They want to pass. They don't want to take the shot. They would rather make somebody else do it. They want to make their teammates happy. So I think as a coach, you can play on that a little bit. You can have your boys maybe encourage them to be more creative on the ball, but then really emphasize you need to be selfless. You need to pass the ball. You need to make sure you're doing things that make sense. Whereas with my girls, more so, I'm telling them, shoot the freaking ball, like be the one to take the shot, because the boys will. The girls, you have to let them know that it's okay. And so I think just making sure that you're kind of playing into, I guess, how they are innately and where they're at. And I think that's a big thing that I have to remember, like my coaching points change based on who I'm with. And then the last thing is just the interactions. I think when you have middle school boys, for example, I am so tough on them in the sense of like I will make fun of them 24/7 and they are okay with that. They love it. They make fun of me too. They tell me half the time that, you know, I'm crazy and whatever. And then my middle school girls, they would never think twice about saying something like that to me, right? And they're like, okay, we have to be so nice and kind, and you know, they're always encouraging each other and whatever. My when a boy makes a mistake, they're like, what the heck are you doing? Like, you suck. And then when the girls make a mistake, they're like, it's okay. Like, you got the next one. So, same thing, just knowing how they are and being able to use that to build relationships. I'm going to build relationships with my boys by making fun of them. That's just how they are. Like, that's just what's going to happen. And then my girls, if I make fun of them, they probably cry, right? So, I'm not going to do that as much. And I'm going to kind of foster more of an encouraging environment. Not to say I don't encourage my boys, right? But I think just personality, biologically, they're just so different. And I think it's been really cool to have the experience to coach both. I coached boys and girls high school, boys and girls middle school, and then boys and girls. I coached women's college, but then I also coached at a boys USL or men's USL2 team. So I've had the experience at these different age groups to see the difference. And it's been really cool. And I think it's made me a better coach because I've really had to make sure, like I said, the things that I'm doing make sense for the group that I'm with. So it's been very neat. And like you said, we're doing a good job of getting more women involved in the boys side of things, but it's still pretty rare. And I would love to see that continue to rise for sure.
It's there's so much psychology involved, of course, in this approach. I mean, it's you've really explained this well. It's an eye opener for sure. Now, I would like to genuinely believe, because the club that I'm with, one of our pillars is gender equality. Now, I still believe that yes, we are going in the right direction, but it's a bit bizarre that we judge a coach by their sessions, by their qualifications, by their experience, but there are still a few people out there for whom the gender of the coach plays a part. So there is still a stigma around female coaches. I mean, I think that's still the reality around the world. So and that to young female coaches as well. So have you ever faced a situation like this? And if so, how have you dealt with it?
Yes, I've had a lot of situations like that. I think that this is more prevalent on the club side. I will say, since I've come into the college realm, I really have not experienced this as much. It definitely still happens, but it's very rare. And I think that's because in the college game, we all understand the direction things are moving and we're trying to reach gender equality and trying to fight for all of those things. However, in the youth side, that is where we seem to have a ton of problems. And what this immediately reminds me, because these things have happened so often, but what I am reminded of is my middle school boys club team. So I coached them for a year. And in that year, I only ever coached against one other female coach, and that was it. And that was incredible. It was super cool to see. But outside of her, it was just me. And I cannot tell you the amount of times that not just the coaches, not just the parents, but the players would make comments to me or make comments to my kids. I cannot recall a single game where I did not hear some sort of comment, except for the only game that I coached against the other woman. And that was it, because they understood it. And every game, there was always some sort of comment made, whether it was the coach being condescending to me when I shook their hand, whether it was parents on the sidelines running their mouths, but more importantly, the players. And that comes from the parents. It comes from the coaches not holding them accountable, which why would they hold them accountable if they don't see anything wrong with it? But I had so many of my boys that would come at halftime or come at the end of the game and, Coach Katie, they're saying this about you. Coach Katie, they're, and awful things that like I would never in a million years even think to say about a coach. And my boys had my back. They knew I was a good coach and they loved me. So they would always talk crap back to the kids, even though I would tell them to just ignore it. They're boys, they didn't care. They would talk crap back, and most of the time we would win. So my boys would be like, well, maybe if you had a girl coach, you would win. That was their favorite thing to say. They said it all the time. And, obviously I don't love them talking crap, but I kind of liked it when they would say that. I was like, yeah, maybe, but it's definitely very prevalent in the youth game. It's very sad. And I think for me, what I do is I try to understand that there are going to be biases. I am starting at a disadvantage. And whether people want to admit that or not, it's true. When I walk onto a field, if I walked up and a 40-year-old man that knew nothing about soccer walked up, you would assume that they knew more than I did. And this came into play the first school that I was at. My dad, who knows absolutely nothing about soccer, he was my assistant coach. He never played soccer, never grew up. And I cannot tell you how many people would come up to him thinking he was the head coach and trying to talk to him. And he would be like, I'm not the head coach, right? But it's like, it's just that implicit bias. They just assume that the man knows more, that the older person knows more. And I think what I try to do, because I know I'm starting at this disadvantage, is I work really hard to be organized. I work really hard to have sessions that are quality, that makes sense, that are game like, all those things. Because I think that when you go and you are a 40-year-old man, you have leeway to make a mistake. When you make a mistake, you're like, oh, like it is what it is. I think if I come in and I make a mistake, I'm not going to be met with that same thought process. So I think that I just work really hard on the front end to make sure that things I'm doing make sense and that I'm setting myself and the team up for success. And I think that early on, when parents start to see that we're having success, they kind of change their mind. But I definitely am starting with that thought of I have to change their mind and I have to make them buy in. And unfortunately, that's not always easy to do. But when you have success, people buy in. Doesn't matter who you are, right? I could be 10 years old. If I win, people are going to love me, right? So I think just being prepared, and when I am met with those things, I typically tend to just ignore them and not really say anything because it's not going to do any good. Those are people that are not going to change their minds probably. But I just try to fight for myself and have people buy in on me. And then I also try to get other young women or women in general involved in the game, because the more of us there are, the more people are going to see, hopefully, us in successful roles. And I think it's huge what we've seen in the last few years female coaches do. I think we still have a lot of work, but we've had a lot of organizations like WAGS and the Jill Ellis Foundation really step up on the education side and try to help get more women involved. But like you said, we still got a ways to go. But it's unfortunate that it happens, but it's a part of it. And to be fair, it's not just women, it's also people of color and people from different ethnicities. I think we all experience discrimination in different ways. So I think that we just have to continue the fight and continue to try to improve our numbers and get more visibility, because I think representation matters, and representation is what's going to help people understand that we can find success too.
I think you have said well said. I think we should probably become more stricter. So, like when it comes to racism, there are many strict rules, but when it comes to gender inequality, I mean, I think there's a kind of a blind eye towards a lot of situations, and the biggest unfortunate part over here is that I don't think there's any proof till date that maybe a female coach is not intellectually at par with a male coach. I don't think there's any proof till today. They probably are at par, if not better. So I really hope that changes. And how much of gender discrimination do you think exists around the world in football?
Oh gosh. I mean, probably more than I would like to know about.
Yeah.
Like I said, I mean, we're talking for club maybe 100, give or take, games in a year. And I would say 99 of those I heard something. And that's, like I said, it could be from anyone, coach, players, whatever. But in my opinion, if you're the coach and your parents and your players are saying something and you're not doing anything about it, you're just as responsible because you're being complicit. So I think there's a lot, and I think it's more than we want to admit. And I think that the first step to being able to fix any of this is just recognizing that there's an issue. And I know, like I said, in the college game, we started to recognize that. We've made huge strides to help improve that. But man, I think it's prevalent, and I think it's a big problem, and especially in the youth game. And I really wish that more women would coach young boys, because that is where you are essentially, if you come in and you coach young boys, like for example, my middle school boys would never think twice about having another female coach, because they had a female coach, they had fun, they loved her, we had success. So if they came in next year and they had a woman that was their coach, they would be like, okay, cool. And they would move on. They wouldn't think about it. But if, when I first got them, they weren't sure about it because they had never had it. And I think that if we can get women involved in youth sports, that is where it starts, because you're helping, like I said, giving exposure, representation that women can do it too at young ages, not only for the kids' sake, but also the parents. And now they're seeing that success, so they don't think as much about it the next time. And I really wish that's something that we would improve on. I know, like, I'm trying to find a club around here where I can get involved and stay involved on the boys side, because I think, like I said, it's really important and it's close to my heart. But yeah, I think a lot. And I think we just have to keep trying to eliminate it, or at least minimize it as much as we can. And still a long way to go, for sure.
Talking from experience back here in India, now part of my role is to hire coaches, and it's amazing that one of our locations, one of our centers, we have hired a female coach. And if when we do a comparison with the parents review and the players review, that's one of our centers where everyone is happy, and that's with a female coach coaching a male's team, of a men's team and younger age group. And I also believe that it's that the younger the age group of the boys, they gel better with a female coach. So I think that's, it works in a big way. But having said that, now some male players, especially in the higher age groups, they may find it a bit unusual to be coached by a female coach. Probably it's just that male ego setting in. Now, if you are put in a situation like that, having to coach a higher age group male squad, what would you do to, how to deal with this? How would you how would you stamp your authority in a situation like this, in an environment like this?
Yeah. So when I went to the USL2 team, men's team, I was met with that at that
Yeah.
point in time. And I was an assistant coach there, so I'll touch on that. But I basically came in and I was an assistant coach, and the head coach was a fantastic guy. His name's David Strickland. He is awesome. And I came in and I kind of told him, like, I don't really know how this is going to go. Like, I'm a little not nervous, but I just am wondering, like, what's going to happen. Right. And so I showed up the first day, and a lot of the boys were pretty surprised to see a female coach out there. And I started running sessions midway through and had a couple things here and there, and they would listen to me and they would do what I said. And I remember on my very last day, we had our last game, we had traveled, we were sitting there and we were playing poker.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to the boys, I'm like, so what did you guys think about having a woman coach now that the season's over? Like, I want your honest opinions. Like, what do you think? And one of them looked at me in the eyes and said, I would never play for a female coach,
Okay.
but I enjoyed having you here. And I said, so if you tomorrow, let's say you were, because they're already in college, but I was like, if you're going into college and you got a call from a Division I high level program that's done really well, female head coach, you wouldn't take it. He said, I would not be interested. And I said, wow, like, that's very telling. And I said, why do you think that is? And he's like, I just don't think that women can coach men. And I said, well, I coached you all summer and it seemed to go pretty well. And he said, he kind of looked and he was like, well, like, that's fair. But he said, you weren't the head coach. And I was like, okay. So I think with that being said, there are definitely guys. I mean, this is a guy, I've coached him for 2.5 months now. He's listened to me, he's done activities, right? But he still said to my face, hey, I wouldn't play for you if you were a head coach, or maybe not me, but a female head coach. And that being said, a female head coach that had success, right? And so I was like, wow, that's very telling. So I think when you come in, and it's so tough because it's like, you can really, I mean, have a standard, but I just think that it's really hard because there are so many issues with this. And I think for me as an assistant, it was really great because I had a head coach that had my back. And my head coach basically said, like, you will not disrespect her or you will be gone. Right. And so they knew not to disrespect me, and they did it because they knew or at least not to our faces, if they did, then they were going to be out. Right. And I think you could do the same thing as a head coach, but I do think you might run into a problem of, okay, well, if everybody does it, then you're not going to have a team.
Yeah.
So I think I don't know. I've never been in that situation. I honestly, I don't really know right now what I would do, but I think just trying to set the standard early on and trying to, like I said, just be prepared on the front end. And when you come in and they have 1, 2, 3 sessions and the sessions are really good and they enjoy them and they feel like they're realistic and they make sense, and you're showing them that you are competent and you know what you're doing, then I think that they tend to change their mind over time. Are you ever going to have them completely sold on having a female? Maybe not, but you can at least get them to buy into what you're doing in the sense of, you know, what you're talking about by demonstrating in the first few training sessions that, like, you know, you're capable of doing it. But it's definitely a difficult situation. It's really challenging. I think as an assistant, you have to make sure your head coach has your back, and as a coach at a club, you have to make sure your director has your back. But I think as a head coach, I don't know, it's a tough question. I think just trying to have a standard and hope that you have a good group of kids that are going to listen. But ultimately, I mean, when people do say things, I guess just holding them accountable. And if you said you're going to kick them off the team and something happens, then you have to do it and you don't really have a choice. And if that means that you're playing short on numbers, it is what it is. At least you're setting the tone. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. That's a hard one, but that's kind of the best I got right now.
I think from the way you've explained it, I think female coaches have this constant pressure to prove a point. So every session needs to be of a certain level. I mean, it's unfair actually, because it's not something that male coaches face. But then just to, speak a bit more on what you have touched on before. So naturally, being a female coach in a man's environment, you're always outnumbered. So, like the opposition coach is a male, the players are males, maybe a lot of parents who are around might be males, the referee will be, so you're in a male dominated environment, so that could be intimidating. Now, how can that be worked on as a female coach?
Yeah, I think exposure is big. I think that the more that you're in that environment, the less you care. I mean, I'll be honest, when I was 20 years old and got offered a head coaching job for 18-year-old boys, I was like, okay, I don't know how this is going to go, but I'm going to figure it out. And I think when I got there and started coaching, probably my first 2, 3 practices, I was a little maybe nervous, or maybe like I don't know what to think. But I think once I got there and started doing it, I was like, okay, like it's really no different than being with girls in sense of, just being able to coach whatever. And so I was just kind of like, okay, well, this isn't as hard. And now I really could not care less. I don't care if I'm around 50 men, boys, whatever. If I'm the only one, it doesn't matter. And to me, honestly, like you said, I think I have a chip on my shoulder. I think I have a point to prove all the time. And while it might not be fair, it makes me better and it makes me more prepared and it makes me more organized. And I think those are all qualities that people notice when I coach them. And it's because, like you said, I feel like I have a point to prove, but sometimes that's not a bad thing. I think it definitely isn't ideal, but I think every coach should have a point to prove to an extent. And so I think that being in a male dominant environment doesn't really matter now. I've done it. I've been in it. It is what it is. And while I love working with men, I really get excited when I get to work with other females. And I know we're going to have a female assistant here. And I'm really excited about that, to be able to work alongside her. And then our goalkeeping coach is also a female. So it definitely is a bit more exciting when there's women involved. But I think that, like I said, just exposure, putting yourself in it and just kind of getting used to it. And then, like I said earlier, I think it's really massive to have people that are going to have your back. My first ever club coaching job, I went to a club where the director did not really think highly of female coaches. He told me to my face that I was only having success on my middle school boys team because the boys thought I was hot. And that's the only reason they were listening to me. And he was just not someone that was pro women. And when I was there, I faced a lot of discrimination, but I never had anyone that had my back. So it was nonstop. Nobody was ever told that if they keep going, they're going to get kicked out of the club. There was no repercussion. So it just continued. And I left there after that year and I went to Lobos Rush, and Lobos Rush is all for women in sports. The directors there are fantastic. They want to get more people involved. They have Tracy, who is the only coach in Tennessee with her A license, male or female, and they do a really good job of having our backs. And so I think there may have been one comment at the very beginning, and it was immediately, if you ever do that again, your kid's getting kicked out of the club. And it never happened, and it really didn't happen much in general because there's a lot of women coaches, so the kids have had women coaches before, and it's pretty normal. And at the schools around there's female coaches as well. So anyways, having said all of that, I think the big two things are exposure and then making sure the environment is one that has your back, because if you don't have a good environment, then you're going to continue to face those issues. And it's just like a reminder all the time that people don't think highly of you. Whereas when you're in an environment where those things don't happen, you can focus on coaching and your kids and not have to worry about all the outside influences as well.
It's constant adversity, isn't it? But then, what do you think football nations, clubs, and decision makers should do so that we can see more women coaches involved in the men's game? Because there are many men involved in the women's game. So, what can they do to reverse this?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, I think starting with the grassroots levels and getting people involved at the younger stages so that they've been exposed to it and they're used to it is massive. I think that this starts with people like my coach, Ted Bartels, coming to us and saying, "Hey, do you guys want to come run skills night?" And we were his players, but he was allowing us the opportunity to also go and coach and get involved in the game in a different way. And when I realized it was something I wanted to do, he was one that was like, okay, let's find opportunities for you to coach games, for you to help. So I kind of went into a role where I was helping the rec coaches coach their kids and like helping them run sessions. And so he helped me get involved in the game. And I think that for us coaches, especially that are involved in the college game with players that are about to go into that next stage of life without soccer, I think it's really important that we get them involved and give them opportunities to coach, because they might not think they want to coach until they do it. I always thought I was going to be a special ed teacher. I figured out I would coach on the side. But when I started coaching, I realized I want to do this all the time, every day. And now that's what I do. And I think being able to give opportunities to those young adults and letting them experience that and see if it's something that they're interested in. And then if they want to continue that path, helping them along the way. And then I also, as I mentioned earlier, I'm really big on women in sports and especially young women. So my kids, the ones that come to me, or maybe I'm recruiting a kid or I was recruiting them a couple years ago, and they're texting me, "Hey, I want to get involved. Like I'm looking for a GA spot." I will help them in any way that I can as a reference, as a connection to help them get there. So I think just being somebody that recognizes the importance of it, being one that helps women get experience coaching, get involved, and then help them get their first step in college if that's something that they want to do.
Yeah.
But like I said, just getting exposed at the younger ages, and then hopefully clubs, we can try to find female coaches. But really, I think this is a difficult conversation because for me, a lot of it is on us as the coaches to get involved. I don't think necessarily people are opposed to having women coaches. I just think there's not enough of them. So they don't really have the opportunity. Like, for example, when you have a college job posted, someone was telling me the other day that they're looking to hire a female or hoping to hire a female, and they had 64 applicants and not a single one was a female. So how can you even try to hire one if you don't? So like I said, just helping get experience, helping women feel that they're able to be a coach, they're capable of doing it, having female coaches that come in and have success they enjoy, and then it's a good environment that will make them want to follow in their footsteps. I know that I'm very fortunate to serve as a mentor for a lot of young women that have told me that they want to coach because of me, and I think that that's really special, and I'm very blessed to have that. And I think the more women we can get involved in sports, the more girls that will become interested in being involved in sports. And hopefully as that goes on through time, you're building young women and girls that want to be coaches and want to be leaders. And over time, hopefully we see that improve. And I think we've seen it kind of on the rise. So we hopefully keep moving in that direction for sure.
Absolutely. I hope that there's a big increase in the number of female coaches. Now, there are many male coaches like myself who are working with women's teams. Now you've covered, in fact, you have quite covered it quite well, what the differences are between coaching male and female players. But now specifically, what would your advice be to male coaches who are working in the female game?
Yeah, I think that the biggest challenge that I grew up with all male coaches. I only ever had one female coach, and it was in college, and I was with her for about a year. So outside of that, I have a lot of experience as a player playing for male coaches, and then also now on the coaching side, seeing male coaches. And I think it's safe to say that one of the big challenges that they have is the emotional aspect. I think that a lot of male coaches try to coach women like they are men, and they try to coach girls like they are boys. And the reality is they are not. They cannot handle the same thing. As I mentioned earlier, I can make fun of my boys all day long, and they're going to love me, and they're going to think it's so funny, and they're going to build a relationship with me by way of me doing that. If I went to my girls and I made one of the jokes that I make with my boys, that would probably detriment that child for the next month. And they would probably not like me. They would think I was a jerk. And I think that's where too many male coaches don't understand, recognize, and implement differences between the two. And I think for me, the biggest thing is, like I said, being an educator, learning the psychology behind them, it helps. And I think if you are a coach of girls and you do not have daughters, because when you have daughters, I think that does help you learn. I think the best male coaches that I have seen are the ones that have daughters, because they understand a bit more what girls think. But if you're a male coach that does not have kids, or daughters specifically, that has never coached girls before, that you're coming in and you have experience with boys, like, you need to do research. You need to get some sort of idea of psychologically how they are different and how to interact with them, and you need to work on the way that you speak to them and you coach them, because it's going to be vastly different than how boys are able to be talked to and coached. And I think with that being said, you also need to make sure that when you come in, you're building those relationships, because, as I said, the girls care about the environment first. I read a study a couple of weeks ago, and it said the number one factor in team success for a women's team at high level women's, college, etc., is if they have a positive environment, because women do not succeed in negative environments.
Right.
Psychologically, they're not built for that. And obviously, you might have one or two that are fine, but general whole, it's not going to happen. So, building relationships, building a positive environment, being encouraging, being slow to react, being understanding, and having those positive attributes that we sometimes don't see in coaches because we're too focused on the game. That's massive in coaching girls. And I think, like I said, bottom line, do your research, know that it's different, and don't just expect to come in and coach the same way just because you had success on the men's side, boys' side, because it's not going to happen.
So that's your advice for male coaches working in the females game. Now, what's your advice to nations who are trying to strengthen the women's football program?
Yeah, I think any national team, any women's top level program, you're really looking to grassroots football. I think what you are teaching at the grassroots level and the habits that they are forming is what is going to be showcased at the top level. And this is a debate and something that I've gotten into over the years, but I truly believe that our highest level coaches should be coaching little kids. And I'm talking like third, fourth, fifth grade kids, middle school kids. Why? Because they are the ones that are building the habits for these kids to come. They are building the soccer IQ. They are building, this is how you do this move. How many times have you gotten a kid in high school and you tell them to do a pullback and they turn their back away from the ball? That's not how you do a pullback. You can't even see the ball. You're going to get the ball taken away anytime you do that in a game. But they don't understand that because they've never been coached properly. So now by the time they get into high school, you're trying to spend so much time breaking these bad habits that they already have that you can't even get into the tactical side of things as much as you want to. So I think our issue goes down to grassroots soccer. I think we have coaches that are parents that have never played soccer, that don't care. And I'm speaking in America specifically just because we're behind in soccer. So we don't have the same in other countries where maybe your grandpa played and we don't have that typically. So here we've got these parents that know nothing about the sport, and they're coaching elementary, middle school. They're coaching at the school, they're coaching at the club, they're doing all these things. And ultimately, it is not fostering a good environment for kids to build good soccer skills.
Yeah.
And ultimately, to me, this is a societal issue in America just because we're so worried about money that there's 15 different clubs in every city and there's not quality. And I think for us, it should be focused on quality, but we're not there. We will never be there because that is not the way that our society is made. But whole picture, all the world, any club, I think it just goes down to the grassroots. And I think the countries that you see invest in their grassroots soccer and you see them put high level coaches and young teams, those are the countries that are having success. The Englands of the world, they're finding a lot of success because they're investing in the kids. So that's what my advice would be. If we want to be better, we've got to do a better job with the kids because that's going to translate 20 years from now to the national programs.
100%. And now for the club that I'm at, now we have I mean, it's a long-term target, which we hope that we can realize this dream one day. We would like to have one day a female coach being the head coach of a men's team, which has its own pressures, the budgets you put into it, and all that stuff. So, what kind of advice would you give to a club who wants to, try and achieve such a milestone?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, just getting exposure to the women at the grassroots and then the middle school and high school, and kind of like letting them work their way up. Because I do think when you're bringing women into men's, it's such a different world. And I think when you start them young and you help them build as they go, it helps them feel more confident in themselves. I am somebody that I am just uniquely confident in myself. And so when I went in to high school boys as a 20-year-old, it didn't really bother me. Like, obviously, I was kind of like, okay, well, we'll see how it goes. But I was never like, oh my God, like, what am I going to do? I'm so scared. But I think a lot of women, if you put them in that situation, might not feel the same way as me. And so I think that it's really important to help them grow their self confidence by working with kids at the young age. Okay, now you're going to take a middle school team. Now you're going to take a high school team. And as you go through, you're getting the kids used to having a woman coach. You're giving the woman experience, and hopefully they're finding success, which then helps them go to the next level and feel confident enough to find success again. And you just kind of keep doing that until eventually, like you said, you got a woman that's done a really good job and she can go be a head coach. And I think it takes time, which we all would love to wake up tomorrow and have all these women involved in sports, and it would be amazing, but it takes time. And I think what we're seeing now is the culmination of years and years and years of the fight for equality. And we finally made some really big strides in the past year or two. And now we're seeing more women get hired than ever before. But I think to continue that, it's just going to keep taking time and keep taking people getting used to it. So I think just investing in women early, giving them opportunities at young ages and letting them kind of move up the ranks, if so to speak, is kind of the way to go.
I think on this podcast, you've really spoken quite a lot and some valid points on, empowering women in football, empowering women in soccer. For sure. I think there are a lot of positive messages, a lot of good advice you have given, which can be implemented in whichever environment anyone is in. So, a lot of practical solutions here. But now, before we end, I'd like to get to know a bit more about, this passion that you have for coaching. So, you have done a lot of courses with the USSF, with the United Soccer Coaches, with TOVO, etc. And currently, you're doing a MS in soccer coaching education with Ohio University. So now, with all these achievements, all these successes on the field, successes off the field with regards to life skills and personality development and all that stuff, what has motivated you to keep getting educated? Because I think this might be a powerful message to all the coaches listening.
That's a great question. So, first off, I am extremely competitive. I am one that I cannot play games in a social setting because I will just lose my mind. So, I think being a coach, I want to be the best. I want to be the best coach that's ever existed. Whether that's possible or not, we'll see. But I think that me being so competitive and wanting to be the best has driven me to continue education. I also consider myself, in general terms, to be a lifelong learner. I think that the one of the biggest purposes in life is for us to grow and learn from one another. And I think that we should always be learning. We should always be trying to improve ourselves as people, ourselves in our craft, whatever that may be. And I think that we should always be looking to learn. I'm somebody that I am like Googling all the conspiracy theories and getting on these rabbit holes, just trying to learn all these different things about the world. And I love traveling. I love gaining different perspectives in culture in different areas of the world. And so I think I'm somebody that I just like to learn. And I joke with my family, but I have been in college for nearly 7 years now. And I went to my family a couple months ago and I'm like, hey, like I'm going to get my doctorate degree and I'm going to start in August. And they're like, you're going to be in college for 10 years, which usually in America, you know, you get your bachelor's in 4 and then maybe a master's in 5. Not many people get their doctorate. If they do, it's like 8, but I'm taking my time. And so I've joked with my parents, but you know, it's just I love to learn and I love to gain new information. I think that's why we're here. And it kind of goes to my higher purpose of life as a whole. But I think in terms of soccer, soccer is a game that is always changing. I think it is a game that is competency based. There are so many different things that can happen. We are not X's and O's. We are not plays and timeouts and run this play really quick. We don't have that luxury that other sports do. And we're teaching children to read the game and react accordingly.
Yeah.
And for us to be able to teach that, we ourselves have to know how to read the game and act accordingly. And I think that when we're talking about soccer, you could never learn all there is to know about soccer in an entire lifetime because it is one of the, if not the greatest sport ever. And it is so vastly unique and creative. And that is what I love about it so much. And so I think that there is not a single course, class, you know, anything that I have ever left and been like, wow, that was useless. I did not learn anything. I am constantly learning. And even just by talking to other people, talking to my mentors, and we're about to have the convention next week, which is really exciting. But just talking to people, you can garner so much information about soccer. And like I said, you will never walk away from something like that and be like, wow, I knew all of that already. And so for me, I love to learn. I think it's important. If you want to be a good coach and you want to have success, you have to keep learning because things are going to keep changing. And the higher up in level you go, the more nuanced your coaching becomes. When I'm coaching 5-year-olds, I'm teaching them how to do a pullback and maybe how to dribble. When I'm at this age, I'm teaching them how to react to maybe a high press situation. Now you've got to get out of it, right? And so I think as you get higher and you start having success, it can be really easy to say, oh, I don't need to learn anymore. Like I'm good. I've done really well. But for me, I credit my successes to the people around me, 1, and 2, I credit them to my education and the work that I've put in to get to know the game. And I think that if I had the knowledge I have now as a player, I would have been the next Messi. But unfortunately, I was a little late on that. So I think that now my job is just to instill what I'm learning to my players to try to help them reach the best that they can. And so for me, like I said, I think it's so important to learn. I think you do not have continued success without continued learning. You look at the top people in our sport and they still are going to courses and going to the convention and getting licensing and asking questions on Twitter and doing all the things because there's still so much to learn. And I know I've accomplished a good bit, but there's also much, much more that I have not accomplished. And there are many coaches that are miles ahead of where I am. So I'm just here trying to learn as much as I can to try and hopefully continue my success and reach higher levels than I have so far and just kind of keep going. But I think you just have to be a lifelong learner, and without knowledge, you're not going anywhere. So
This could be a fantastic quote. You cannot have continuous success without continuous learning, for sure. And now you have also done the TOVO courses. Now TOVO is quite a well-known, I would say, coach education institute, in world football. I think it's owned by Todd Bean, Johan Cruyff's son-in-law. So what is the V1 course all about?
yeah, I love that you chose them specifically to shout out because Todd, actually, going alongside what we talked about, I had posted something about my UEFA course. I was trying to figure out how to get into it. Still haven't quite gotten there, but he responded to me and essentially told me about Tovo. I'd never heard of it. He was kind of like, if you want more information, DM me. So I DM'd him, and he actually told me that essentially he was wanting to get more women to take his course, and
Yeah.
he offered me to take his course for free,
Mm.
which was awesome. And so given that, I would totally recommend Tovo to anybody, just because the owner is so fantastic, and I thought that that was really kind of him, and it showed his desire for getting women involved in the game. So shout out to him, shout out to them. That was awesome. But the V1 course is really about you trying to sort through what is your coaching philosophy, what do you stand for as a coach, and what are the things that you do to ensure that you are actually doing the things that you want to do. So if you want to be remembered as a coach that cared about your players, what are you doing every single day to be remembered in that way? Are you going out of your way to show them you care, or are you treating them like crap? Then you're like, well, I just want them to like remember I cared somehow, right? And so it's really just helping you. It's almost like a workshop, and it's helping you work through what your thought processes are, why you do things the way you do, how you act when maybe you're under pressure or difficult situations. And then it really touches on how culture matters and the treatment of players matter. And, they're people first. And I think Todd is one, his Tovo is one that I really resonate with, because it reminds me a lot of my own coaching philosophy. And so it was really well put together, and I really enjoyed taking it. I felt like it aligned with me and a lot of things that I've said today. And so, like I said, I would recommend that to anybody. I thought it was a great course and great person running it. So
Right. Good information, because it's on my bucket list. So yeah, I think this was fantastic, Katie. This was quite a fantastic chat. Before I let you go, we have a standard question for all our guests. What does the future look like for you? What are your future plans?
okay, so my end goal, my number one goal as a coach is I would like to coach on a US youth national team. And that is something that I am working towards, alongside working to being hopefully a Division 1 head coach someday. My dream school is LSU. I grew up an LSU fan. My dad's from New Orleans. That's my ultimate dream school. But within the next few years, I just moved to Kansas yesterday. So I will be here. I'm actually going to be completing a second bachelor's degree here in Spanish.
Wow.
And then while I'm doing that, I'm finishing my master's degree in August. I will start my doctorate degree a few days later. And my doctorate degree will be in global sports leadership. I'm currently in the waiting period between my C and B license with US Soccer, but once my waiting period is up, I would like to start my B license, and then after that, get my scouting license, start scouting for US Soccer, and then that would be the pathway, hopefully, to getting on staff at a US team, which would be years down the road. So right now, I'm kind of working towards both goals at once, and then in a few years, we'll see which one kind of gets the opportunity first. But I also am planning on this year. So I currently am enrolled in the coaching credentialing course through United Soccer Coaches. We start that this coming week at the convention, or right before the convention. And then I also am a part of the 30 under 30 class this year for United Soccer Coaches. So we have some things that we'll be doing with them within the next year. We'll be working on a project, and I think writing an article for a couple different things, podcasts and such. And then I also think that through that, we have the opportunity to be in one of their courses. So I have my advanced national right now. I would like to do the premier course through United Soccer Coaches as well. So those are kind of my plans. Lots of stuff to do, always lots of stuff to do. But that's kind of my plans. That's hopefully the direction that I'm headed in. And hopefully in 2 to 3 years, we'll have an opportunity in one of those realms, whether it's a Power 5 Division 1 spot, or a spot with a US youth team, or some sort of situation there. But yeah, that's what I'm working
And
towards.
is fantastic, but is the UEFA license anywhere on your list? And also, is going abroad to develop women's football anywhere on your list at all?
So, okay, first of all, I want to do the UEFA. I have had such a hard time getting accepted into it. And my goal was I wanted to do it in between my waiting period with the US, But I wound up just not being able to get accepted. And then people were saying Wales, but then Wales, you have to do the prereq and it's in person. So
Yeah.
I just have not had very much luck with that. There is a company that does the UEFA once a year in America, and they register, but they sell out like super fast. So I am hoping to get on board with that whenever they announce 2024. But honestly, no promises, because it's just been super difficult. I know there's been a rise in people wanting their UEFA, and so it's caused a bit of a challenge to get in. But if there's an opportunity where I'm able to, I would love to. But as of right now, it has not happened. And I've gotten a lot of advice from different people, and I've tried pretty much every federation possible, and it's just not happening. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah.
And then the abroad question. So I would love to coach abroad. I speak Spanish, and I have experience teaching bilingual preschool. And then also I have taught English to adults as well from other countries. And my problem is that I did not expect myself to get involved in college so quickly. I thought it was going to take a bit more time.
Yeah.
So originally I was kind of like, well, I'm going to be here, and then in high school I'll graduate, maybe I'll go abroad, and then I'll like come back and try to get involved in college. Well, I wound up getting involved in college before I even graduated college. So I was kind of having a problem, and now it's like I have a really great opportunity here at Pitt State. We're creating a first ever team, so that's really special, and I'm excited to be a part of that. After I get done here, I don't know what the future holds. I will say I would be totally open to going somewhere abroad, just pending what life looks like at that point in time. I think that if circumstances were different, I would already be somewhere else, because I think that would be a very cool experience. But I don't know. I'm really, outside of soccer and my career, I'm not a planner. I really don't care where I end up. And then in my career, like, I have goals and things I want to do, and I know like I need to take this class and whatever, but I'm kind of just going with the flow. Like if a good opportunity comes up, then why would I not take it? So I'm definitely not opposed to something like that. But I know for now, my Spanish degree at Pitt State's going to be, I think, 2 years. So at least for the next 2 years, I'll be here and I'll be working on my things. And then after that, we'll kind of see where things wind up going. But I'm not opposed to it. I think it would be really special to be a part of. So we'll see.
I wish you luck with that. Katie, it's been an absolute pleasure interacting with you. Thank you for giving me more than 1 hour of your time to discuss football, to discuss uplifting women coaches, to talk about your passion for the game, to continuously learn. And it's been a fantastic chat overall. It's going to be useful for me and for a lot of listeners. So thank you for your time.